Welcome back. A wave of widespread public dissent is sweeping across the globe, from the bustling capitals of Europe to the streets of South America and the cities of Africa as well as Asia. Now, this surge in global protests presents a complex and often contradictory picture of our modern world. While the specific grievances are deeply local, from anger over soaring cost of living and economic inequality to demands of political freedom and social justice, a common thread of profound frustration connects them. Professor David Monyae joins us to give us his perspective on this issue. Prof, a pleasure to have you on the program this evening. We've recently seen widespread protests erupting in places like France, Nepal, as well as Slovakia, for instance. What do these movements reveal about the global political and economic climate, especially this year?
It is quite disturbing that a number of factors seem to be influencing these events. I think chief among them is the depressed global economy that is not growing at a rate in which it will absorb unemployment, inequality, and poverty in general. And we also have seen with the, since 2008 up to the COVID-19, and now sharpened by the coming into power of President Donald Trump and the tariffs that he has unleashed, which has worsened the situation in terms of trade within and among states across the world. But we see day to day people unhappy with service delivery from their governments, governments' mistrust of leaders, failure to live up to the promises made during elections. So there's a whole list of factors that seem to be influencing most of these events across the world.
With that said, Prof, in the case of France, for instance, many are protesting budget cuts and austerity measures in that country. Why do austerity policies continue to spark such intense public backlash, especially in developed democracies?
Yes, I think France has been facing this crisis. We have to go back. There has been endless demonstration in France for the last 10 years or so, whether farmers getting into seats with tractors, or the youth on the streets. And there has also been unhappiness with France across the African continent, particularly in West Africa, in which the French were kicked out. And France is no longer having that economic advantage over some of these African countries. And to deal with budget shortfalls within France, I think the government went on a massive restructuring of both the economy as well as politics in terms of immigration and other measures taken. Cutting holidays, for instance, some of the measures taken by government, as well as increased tax. And the direct results is people on the streets. And I think we're going to see more of that. In Britain, recently, I think we've seen more.
Yeah.
In United States, there are pockets of this. But I think with each year, unless there's a huge turnaround of the global economy, I think we're going to see more of this chaos in most countries.
I want us to expand on that point. Do you see common threads or even root causes connecting protests in Europe, Asia, and elsewhere, such as what you spoke of in the beginning, economic inequality, erosion of public services as well, or even political disenfranchisement there?
Oh, indeed. I think what we see is that mistrust in the liberal democracy, that so much had been said about democracy since the 90s and up to now. In most instances, people go on vote, as the lady mentioned in Western Cape, that politicians come to get our X's, meaning vote and put an X on a ballot box. And that exercise is done with an expectation that there will be safety, there will be food on the table, there will be employment, safety on the roads, as well as education and all other factors. When people do not receive the promises that were made, they tend to express their anger. And at times, it's just on the street. In other places, governments, there will be coups, the military will come in and take over. There will be all sorts of other measures. And those who take advantage of the situation, that they will have better answers than those in power. So I think we see this not only in the so-called third world countries, developing world, but it's now creeping into the core of the Western world and most developed countries.
Yeah. Going back to the France example, the French have had 3 prime ministers in 1 year, with the latest, Sébastien Lecornu, now facing strikes and a divided parliament as well. What does this political instability signal, especially about the health of French democracy?
Extremely weak and lack of stability and trust in the system. I think the outgoing prime minister made it quite clear that the problem of France has nothing to do with just leaders. It's much more deeper in terms of the structure of the economy. And therefore, I think French people and so many other nations across the world have to think much more deeper before burning buildings while exercising their democratic rights in doing so, and also to come up with solutions. Some of these problems is not a matter of just taking leaders out of a parliament or state house, as we see in Nepal, but a real serious thinking and conversation among the citizens and come up with solutions instead of just worsening the situation by just banning.
Let's explore this theme. Trade unions and public sector workers, they've taken center stage in French protests. Is this a resurgence, in your view, of labor, especially as a political force in the West?
Oh, indeed. I think we see with the tension, the ideological tensions that are taking place with process of globalization and deglobalization taking place at the same time, high unemployment. I think what it is doing, it's also undermining trade unions. But having said that, the rise of right-wing governments from United States into much of Western Europe and among African countries, I think in our own ranks, I think we're starting to see fascism on the rise. And therefore, I think what you see at this tension, and therefore, I think there's agitation where certain formation, political associations are coming up with alternatives. And I think we're going to see this tension of both extreme right and extreme left.
Professor Monyae, looking beyond France, in Nepal we've seen demonstrations over corruption and governance. In Slovakia, for instance, tensions have also risen around judicial reform in that country. How do these reflect shifting expectations of governance, especially in the global south and post-communist states?
Particularly in the post-communist states, your Poland, your Czechs, and the whole former Soviet Union. I think there was so much expectation that joining either EU or just the West with capitalism at its height, there will be much more delivery of service and betterment, better infrastructure development, and the well-being of people. But the inequality within these countries is worsening. And just beyond inequality within these countries, I think you also see the lack of fair trade and certain relation within Europe itself, where certain countries feel that they're at the receiving end of the most developed. I think we had Greece that at some point fell apart, recovering now, Italy at some point, but we're also seeing within the United States certain areas with huge deindustrialization, with massive uprising white young male on the streets, and they express their political rights at times in the right way, but at times worsening the situation, coming up with either racism or political assassination, as we have noticed in the United States quite recently.
Yeah. As we wrap, are we witnessing a global reawakening of civil society, Prof? Or are these protests a symptom of systematic political decay or even weakening institutions in some of these countries?
I'll say all of the above. Institutions are unable to deal with this crisis, but on the other hand, there's also a rise of a younger generation that sets itself apart from our generation that has certain views from the past of believing in the system that it will deliver. And the younger generation seem to not agree with the older generation. So a number of factors are at play unless we come together and find a best way of ensuring that whether constitutions or ideologies that we carry are not cast in stone. They need to be modernized. You need to relook and move with times, because with high technology and all sort of changes, they also have an impact in terms of the well-being of people on a day-to-day basis.
Professor David Monyae, thank you so much for helping us, or rather make sense of this very important discussion, growing wave of global protests and what it means for both democracies and developing nations. As always, his insight gives us a critical lens to these unfolding events as well. A big thank you from Professor David Monyae.